It is that part of the year when the weather is changing, the festival season is around, we can hear the crackers bursting at some distance, we can see the fairy lights decorating the buildings outside, and it is also pleasant to just look around and enjoy the vibration of this time of the year. And I am back with another video discussing one of my favorite writings ever, and it is not just because of my ideological tilt towards the ideology of its author, but also because of the clarity with which this essay is written. And to know that the author was just 23 years old young man at the time of writing this essay, it all makes the essay even more impressionable. And I was in college myself when I came across this excellent piece of writing. And I'm yet to find another piece of writing which is as short and as clear, as detailed as well. And I think before we delve deeper into the essay, which is called Why I Am an Atheist, and I will be discussing why Bhagat Singh was an atheist. But before that, I think there is a need of certain context. He was in Central Jail of Lahore awaiting his trial in Central Assembly bomb case, and he was questioned if he would not pray for his life given the death sentence in such a case was almost certain. And in this backdrop, Bhagat Singh set to write this essay, which itself became an immortal piece of writing, the kind of poetic justice it is. Almost a century after his sacrifice, we see many people trying to appropriate legacy of Bhagat Singh as their own, but most of these people actually do not understand his philosophy or his vision, which is quite unfortunate. It is true Bhagat Singh refused to bow down before the British, and we all know that. But what we also need to remember is that he also refused to bow down before any kind of blind faith, which is the part that history has somehow missed about him. Firstly, the essay Why I Am an Atheist is not an attack against organized religion or the faith of anyone in particular. It is rather an explanation or a constructive criticism of blind faith, of course, and also it shows us the kind of sharp, questioning mind he possessed. He was a free thinking man who wanted to have reason behind anything that he was believing in. He has, in fact, tried to address those people who accused him of arrogance or who held that he was an atheist because he was tired of his vanity or it was his life situation that, in particular, made him atheist at that point. But Bhagat Singh reminds his readers that he was not an atheist because of the situations he was facing at the time of writing this essay, but rather it was the lifelong journey of exploring what reason is, what religion is, what faith is. He reassures his readers that his disbelief is not born out of his frustration or his ego. In fact, he reminds the readers of his background. He was born in a family that was Arya Samaji. Particularly, his father was a devout Arya Samaji. And also, he studied in a DAV school, which again is a place where education was all the more influenced by Indic religions. In his essay, Bhagat Singh has also mentioned about a lot of people who have had influence over him, his icons, and even the revolutionaries or his comrades who were in the socialist spectrum but also were religious. For example, he mentions the name of Sachindranath Sanyal, who was a very great freedom fighter and also the writer of book Bandi Jeevan. So Bhagat Singh in his essay points out how Sachindranath Sanyal, despite being socialist or a communist revolutionary, was actually singing glory to God in his book's preface. He also discusses how Ram Prasad Bismil or even freedom fighters like Rajan Lahiri were all also religious at core, despite having an outlook that demanded them to be more of rationalist, in fact, in the freedom fight. So this is where we get an idea that Bhagat Singh was not in the herd or just following others randomly. In fact, many of his co-patriots were very religious at heart. It was his individual inclination and his individual rationality that shaped his views and also the readings that he had gone through. He also mentions the names of those writers that he was reading at that point. He had read Bakunin, Lenin, Trotsky, Karl Marx, and he had also read Swami Nirlamba. So, all through writings of these writers, he was able to hold on to his view that he was not a believer. According to Bhagat Singh, religion was not something that was giving human beings a strength, but rather it was born out of their weakness or their need to hold on to something. To quote Bhagat Singh himself from his essay, he says, beliefs make it easier to go through hardships, even make them pleasant. Man can find a strong support in God and an encouraging consolation in His name. If you have no belief in Him, then there is no alternative but to depend upon yourself. It is not child's play to stand firm on your feet amid storms and strong winds. In difficult times, vanity, if it remains, evaporates, and man cannot find the courage to defy beliefs held in esteem by common people. If he really revolts against such beliefs, we must conclude that it is not sheer vanity, he has some kind of extraordinary strength. This is exactly the situation now. So he was not just aware of the situation he was in and that his death sentence was almost certain, there was no extraordinary power that could prevent that death sentence. But at the same time, he was also aware of the extraordinary strength that he possessed in himself, that he was aware of. And he was very sure that it was his reason or it was his free thinking and clear mind about the religion or his perspective about the religion. At the same time, he knew very well that in his situation, the idea of God could be more helpful than anything else to think about, to believe in at that point, knowing that death was certain and near. He writes, as regards the origin of God, my thought is that man created God in his imagination when he realized his weakness, limitations, and shortcomings. Few lines later, he writes, the idea of God is helpful to a man in distress. And in this situation, who else could know this better than Bhagat Singh himself when he was actually counting days for his death? He was awaiting his trial, and it could be any time in that year that his death sentence would be declared. And it was in a year actually. And this is the kind of perspective that we see in Bhagat Singh. Not only he believed that a religion was unnecessary for human survival, he also criticized it very constructively. He pointed out how religion is used to prevent the status quo from being challenged or from questioning the established order of the things as they are. And he even criticizes not only the religion but also the men who used religion to further their own agenda or their own words. For example, Bhagat Singh's criticism of Mahatma Gandhi in this very essay. He writes, you go against popular feelings, you criticize a hero, a great man who is generally believed to be above criticism. What happens? No one will answer your arguments in a rational way. Rather, you will also be considered vainglorious. Its reason is mental instability. Merciless criticism and independent thinking are the two necessary traits of revolutionary thinking. As Mahatma Ji is great, he is above criticism. As he has risen above, all that he says in the field of politics, religion, ethics is right. You agree or not, it is binding upon you to take it as truth. This is not constructive thinking. We do not take a leap forward, we go many steps back. So, throughout this essay, he is actually telling us in very clear terms, in very clear words, that truth does not need divine support to stand. In fact, it must stand without divine support. It is this rationality which he uses to back his arguments, to also dismiss the allegations that had been made against Bhagat Singh by his own known ones, who either in jokes or who even in their serious conversation alleged that Bhagat Singh's disbelief or Bhagat Singh's atheism was actually grounded in his ego or in his vanity or hopelessness or we say pessimism. And he himself writes, As far as the question is concerned, I think I have made it clear that I did not turn atheist because of my vanity. Only my readers, not I, can decide whether my arguments carry any weight. If I were a believer, I know in the present circumstances my life would have been easier, the burden lighter. My disbelief in God has turned all the circumstances too harsh, and this situation can deteriorate further. Being a little mystical can give the circumstances a poetic turn. But I need no opiate to meet my end. I am a realistic man. By this time, he had not only accepted life and death as just part of the universe and simply the matters of fact rather than anything beyond this world. And also, he furthers his questions by asking us if God exists and if God is all just, how does the God allow injustice to exist everywhere? And he asks us again, who is to be blamed? Is it God who is to be blamed for the injustice that exists in the world? Or is it the man who is responsible for that injustice which is existing in the world? And he also further refuses to accept that oppression or poverty could be just explained merely as divine retribution. And he demanded that there should be a reason to anything that exists rather than comfortable answers that are grounded in the belief system that have no rationality or cannot be proven, at least in this lifetime. And he does not pose himself as all knower or superior to others. He is just putting out what he believes in. He, in fact, accepts that doubts and belief systems could, in fact, coexist. But today we live in a world where questioning is discouraged and you cannot ask these very simple questions. His essay carries that freedom of dialogue rather than sitting quiet or fearing being rejected or cancelled, as we say it these days. And this is the beauty of this writing. Whether you believe in God or you don't, you must actually read this essay because it is not just the viewpoint of Bhagat Singh, but it also shows you what critical thinking is. And to taste a sharp, questioning mind, you should actually read this one. It is such a good read, and I believe as long as there are minds that dare to question, Bhagat Singh's legacy actually lives on. And it is a responsibility for all of us as Indians, as the ones who have inherited the freedom for which he sacrificed his life. Also, this essay is not the only writing that survives. There are few other letters that Bhagat Singh wrote from the jail to his friends, to his family, his brother, and all these letters carry immense value for anyone who is fond of Bhagat Singh, right? So yeah, read Bhagat Singh more and more. We really need to prevent misappropriation of his legacy, of his ideas, and his vision that he had for this country. I will see you in another video with some other work that I would want to share. Till then, bye.